Hello everyone, and welcome to my video on how I made my Scream-inspired dress for the Her Universe fashion show. This was such a fun time, and I can't wait to break it down for you guys. So here was my design that I created. It is based off of Scream, as you can see, and I wanted the design to kind of tell a story, so I blended Casey Becker, Drew Barrymore's character, with Ghostface, as kind of like Ghostface was always chasing her. She could never get away. There's the areas that there's blood dripping from in the design is kind of based on where she kind of got cut, along with a very gothic Morticia kind of silhouette that I kind of wanted the Ghostface design to mimic a more feminine look. And I just loved the sleeves for added drama. It just felt very Victorian and kind of gothic. So here it is. This is the design that they chose, and I decided to go ahead and make this design, and I think it turned out pretty great. So getting into the design, I did a muslin mock-up of a altered, I think it was a McCall's pattern. I ended up adding a train, I ended up adding sleeves, I changed the princess seams around a little bit, but this was allowed within the competition. So I worked smarter, not harder, and based it off of an already existing pattern and added a whole lot of my own. So here is me tracing the back part of the train. Here is where I started to rework the neckline. I wanted it to be a little more Morticia, kind of vintage, not really vintage, because I wanted a kind of a 90s feel as well with it. So I chose black velvet for the main fabric of the dress, and I think this was a smart choice, but I did end up changing the square neckline to a sweetheart neckline. I just think it blended better with the silhouette of the gown. And so right here is where I'm like, oh, I want to change it now. So I went and changed it into a sweetheart neckline. And this is where I made all of my design decisions before cutting it out into fabric. So here I am fitting in the sleeve that I draped onto the dress form, making sure that hits nice because I wanted that line where the shoulder is to be very clean and close to the princess seams. I have a shoulder width that's larger than normal in my opinion, so I just wanted to make sure that definitely worked out. So right here I am shoring up the train, making sure it's nice and even before I cut it out of the actual fabric. I did end up using this muslin mock-up as my lining. I do that for a lot of my costumes and cosplays and fashion, just to save on fabric. Don't really need a lining if you already have a lining. And there wasn't a whole lot of design differences that required me to like remove a lot of the pattern work, so it worked well for the lining. But if you ever decide to drape a train, make sure you only draw half of it, and then you mirror the other side on your pattern just to make sure everything lines up nice and even. So here I am just kind of lining up those back princess seams and making sure the lines are even and not wonky and weird, because this train needed to be full but not long. So I wanted it to drape around me as I walked, but I didn't want to have to like carry it everywhere. Once my mock-up was done and everything fit perfectly, I removed all of the cat hair off of the black velvet that definitely built up over time, and now I'm going to cut the pieces out. Now I did have to, this cutting took me so long, man. I had to do it on the floor, I had to do it on the table, because it was just really long, weird pieces, since I did it all in basically panels and I didn't want a waist seam. It definitely worked out in my favor when I moved it to the floor. So And this is also, I used stretch black velvet, mainly because I had this fabric on hand. It saved me a lot of cost to be able to just use what I had. And also the stretch provided a little bit more wiggle room. And I didn't need to be that structured. I only had the princess seams there mainly for design lines. Also, I bet you're wanting to know why I was wearing gloves. For some reason, this fabric that I have really bleeds pretty bad. And so usually when I cut the pieces of this fabric, when I use it for other costumes or fashion, I end up washing and drying it before I make it because this black comes off on everything. So it worked out just fine. It didn't shrink my fabric. Washed it on cold. I like to pre-wash fabric as much as I can. Helps a lot. So here I am lining up my pattern and getting ready to chop it out. Here I am getting ready to flatline the muslin mock-up to my fabric to give it a lining to make it nice and soft on the inside. Highly recommend doing this if you guys don't do it already, is to flatline your lining. It makes life so much easier. Now it's seam time. I move my dress over to my Bernina and start seaming up the dress. It was actually pretty easy to put together since I only had panels, honestly, and sleeves. A lot of the small work that kind of slowed me down was the detailing, especially the back cutout, which I'll go over here in a bit. Here was my first big mistake, was underestimating the line that my sleeve would make. So I had to go back in and make a new armhole. But it would not be a Jedimanda fashion original if there wasn't at least 5 mistakes in the first couple rounds. I mean, I should trademark it at this point. Ooh, yeah, here we go. My first fit test. Oh, this thing fit like a glove when I put it on. I'm like, honestly, I'm amazed. That's why I'm like freaking out. Just a little bit of adjustments needed to be done near the shoulders and a little bit more taken in at the waist because I did end up wearing my corset underneath of it. Okay, now we get to the ghost face part. So on the back of my gown there are cutouts of ghost face going all the way down the spine of my back. So the first things I did was cut out of muslin the patterns for his face, his eyes, nose, and mouth. I just freehanded these, and once I was done and I liked the way they looked, I did a little bit different method. I think if anybody decides to follow this video to make their own gown similar, you can do it this cutout. It's a cutout, I will say. You can do this very many different ways. So what I ended up doing was actually putting fabric underneath of my dress, and I mean, you'll see the process here in a bit. And I ended up satin stitching or doing running stitches all around the details of Ghostface, and then I ended up cutting out the black velvet and the lining to reveal the silk charmeuse that was underneath. So right here, I'm just shoring up the draped mouth piece that's going all the way down my back because I didn't want it to look too much like a skunk, even though I kind of thought that. But it was fine. It ended up working out just fine. So once I was done with this pattern, I cut out Actually I didn't. I cut out a much larger swath of the silk charmeuse, which is what that ended up being. I actually had to interface it because it was way too see-through. But when I had my pattern on the dress, I did a basting stitch, a hand basting stitch to know exactly where I know the pattern's going to go. And then I applied the fabric underneath, and then you'll see me chop it up here in a bit. But for some reason, I don't know why, I just moved to the sleeves. I think I was fine. I was done with that for a second. But this is pleated chiffon that I purchased from Moon Fabrics, so I did not do the pleats for this. For the sleeves, I just literally chunked out a huge bit and draped the sleeves onto the bottom part of the sleeve that was already existing. First, I needed to gradient dye it though, because I needed that blood. Hey there, popping in my Scream Dress Huffs video to show you my setup that I made for the sleeves, which very much reads Victorian, Gothic, might have just killed my husband for his money mode. Look at this. I love that I needed something to hang them all off of to drip dry, and I got a ladder and my colored towel underneath, and now all of my pieces are bloodied and drying, and hopefully by either late tonight or tomorrow morning I can go in and work with them and we can be right back to working on the dress. But for now, other parts of the dress shall resume. Okay, so now we're back to the cutout. Underneath I'm showing you the blocks of fabric that I have pinned into the area. I just wanted to do this method because I think sewing over curves and having to do applique sometimes can mess up, especially with velvet because it has a pile. So I decided the cutout method was perfect. So I took, once everything was pinned in where it needed to be, I then took my gown over to the sewing machine and did a running stitch, like a smidge of a hair next to the basting stitches that I have right there. And then that was my actual line for me to cut out what you're seeing right here, the velvet and the lining, and not trying to cut out the sewn in pieces underneath the silk charmeuse. So once I had those cut out, I now took it to the machine and I did a satin stitch over the running stitch that I did. And what that did was that it made a nice, very nice clean edge around the cutouts and made it just look really nice. So I highly recommend this method. You can hardly see it there, but it's black satin stitching all around the edges of those. Oh, there we go. You can see it a little bit better. And then once I had those cut out pieces, I just went over and just kept doing that satin stitching all the way down. I really liked the way this looked. It requires a lot of precision cutting, so make sure you don't cut the silk underneath, but it ended up working out great. Here's some beautiful red paint visuals. So I will say when I was done dip dyeing the pleated chiffon sleeves, I didn't think they were red enough. They weren't bloody enough. They ended up kind of going a little more pink. And so instead of doing another round of dip dye, which if you don't know me, I don't like dyeing at all, I went for paint. And I knew that was going to stiffen the fabric. Now I did add a lot of water into this acrylic, so honestly it was more of a wash than like straight up paint on it, and I didn't need it to really move or anything. So if it ended up stiffening the fabric, it was going to be fine. But I liked the gradient that this gave. I thought it was a quicker, faster method, and method that I was more comfortable with. And plus, I went in and my friend Alex actually helped me do all this blood splatter, but I went in with blood splatter with the acrylic wash, and I just thought that gave such a cute touch. Morbid touch, but touch of that. Okay, so here's how I hemmed, quote unquote, my sleeve edges. Since this is poly chiffon, I did not want to do a big stitch all the way around, especially if it's pleated, since it's pleated. So I took my hot knife, added a tip on that was rounded, and very carefully went along the edge and singed the edge of the fabric. Since it's polyester, 100%, it wouldn't go up in flames, it'll just melt. So this is one of my favorite ways to finish the edges of polyester fabric. After the sleeves were done, I ended up adding very, very wide horsehair trim into my hem to give it more of that Morticia Addams billow, and also to help me for not stepping on it. I did make gloves. Here are the red velvet gloves that I went and created. These weren't too bad. I'm not a huge glove making fan, but I just felt like I needed that extra touch of gothic gore since Ghostfaces wear gloves as well. But I liked the red. I liked the red pop it gave. So those are just the simple gloves that I created using a pattern that I had. So here's one of the final things I did. I made my, it's not really a belt, but it was more like a waist chain of beads. And I wanted these beads to kind of represent blood drips. And so I just created a pattern that I liked. And I just loved the pop, this glamour pop that it gave around my waist. And then once I was done making the main chain and the pattern that I wanted, I attached a bunch of little blood drips to the side using Stretch Magic, which is a stretchy, it's not a wire, but like, I don't know, it's what people use in bracelets. I don't know what it's called, but it was called Stretch Magic, and it ended up working great for me because I needed to move around in it. Yeah, so I added a lot more little blood drips all the way around the waist. There was an element of my design that I left out because these chiffon pieces that were supposed to go down the front princess seams of my dress ended up looking like party streamers. I hated the way they looked, and so I just omitted it. Hoping that was okay, but I think this ended up looking a lot better because sometimes you design stuff and you need an editing eye when you push from 2D to 3D, and that was one thing that just did not work in real life. Looked good on the design, didn't work in real life. So here is the final look of the dress. I love the way it turned out. It's actually pretty simple for what I'm used to making, but I dig it. It just was so elegant and so gothic and 90s and fun, and it fit me like a glove. Like, I was really proud of my patterning on this one. I knew I needed just one little more element, so I decided to make a Scream phone clutch. This was the exact replica of the phone that Casey Becker has when she talks to Ghostface at the beginning of Scream. I wanted to make something fashion-y, and so I bought this off of Etsy, and then I turned it into a clutch. Does it hold things? Held one tube of lipstick and my necklace, but that's about it. And then I just blinged it to hell because I knew I was going to be on stage, the lights were going to be hitting it, and I just wanted a prop, and plus something to do with my hands. And I think it really turned out cool. I love this prop. It's so cool. The last thing I added was a Casey Becker style wig, a choker with a little blood drip on it, and hit the stage. So this was my whole runway walk. I did a bit of an acting. I'm a ham. I'm a ham on stage. I had a lot of fun acting like someone was calling me and I didn't want them to talk anymore because I've got this awesome runway to hit, and they kept calling me and they kept calling me and it was making me scared, so then I ran away. I did end up actually screaming on stage. I was the loudest scream I think I've ever done, but I think it just really worked well for my runway walk because I really wanted to ham it up. It's a horror movie. It's crazy. But yes, so thank you again for watching my video. I'm sorry that I could not post a lot of this stuff online when we were working on it, but when you do this competition, you cannot talk about it online. You can't share your ideas. You can say that you're in it and you're working on it, but you can't share your design until you hit the runway. So that's kind of a contract thing you must know before you're doing this. If you guys have any questions about the Her Universe fashion show, this is the first time I ever did it. I am not a veteran. I was a first time entry and first time caller, first time winner. Actually, no, I didn't win, but I would be glad to answer them. Just put them in the comments below and we can chat. So I normally don't do a lot of fashion on this channel, but I'm trying to do more. This is a cosplay channel and just all things that I make. So I really hope you subscribe to my channel and follow along my weekly videos. I do cosplay mostly, but also fashion. I'm getting there. This was an amazing experience. It was a 3-month build. I ended up finishing it actually a little bit early, And the show itself was 2 days of rehearsal and show at San Diego Comic-Con. It was an honor to be chosen. I can't believe that I got in the first time and was able to do this opportunity. So thanks to Her Universe and everybody on the team. And also thanks to all of my other contestants that were in the competition. You guys are amazing and you're constantly inspiring me. So until next time, everybody, please subscribe to my channel and I will see you later. Bye.